Welcome to the next episode of our series on you have your beer, your cocktail, and we enjoy the beach setting, and I am giving something like a 30-minute presentation on a topic which is seahorses. And if you want to learn more about that, you're very welcome to join me tomorrow. We are actually starting at 8:30. And then there's a longer workshop, in-depth treatment of this group of animals. And then we'll do 1 or 2 dives, and I'll be on the dive. So if you want to ask me more things in between the dives, or I'd be up for that. And I will try to find these animals, the seahorses. And so this is the topic for today. But before we start, so there's a holiday today in the Philippines. I'm not sure if you're aware of that. So anybody here who is a Philippine citizen who should know that. Right? You. So it's Rizal Day, exactly. So and I wanted to mention that. So that's Jose Rizal, right? Now, what is he famous for?
Diving.
So he was a political activist, right? And so today is actually the anniversary of his death by execution by the Spanish. And so he is known to be a political activist and a novelist, but he was also a biologist actually, and he was over there in Dapitan. He was in exile for a few years when he first he never fired a shot, right? He purely pieced the Spanish off by writing books, which I think is to his great credit. But while he was in exile, he was also collecting a lot of the biodiversity of the Philippines, especially medicinal plants and insects, and then he would send that to Germany. And he had studied in Tübingen, I believe. You know that guy?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Dr. Rizal.
Exactly.
Our hero.
Yeah, and so then I'm pretty sure he would be scuba diving if he was alive today. Now, so then the other thing I wanted to mention, I have that just came out 3 weeks ago. I have a new book out which is about scuba diving physiology and what happens in your brain.
Yeah.
It's exclusively an ebook at this point, so it's only $3. You can get it on Amazon or directly with the publisher Hübner. I think it's a good book. Now, seahorses. What are these even, right? So sometimes when you're talking to people who are not scuba divers or biologists or nature lovers, they would ask what is this? Is this even a fish, right? Because the body shape of these animals is so modified from the typical fish shape. I mean, what do you think of when you think of a fish, right? Like a tuna or a trout, something like that, right? But this is probably the most this bony fish body has evolved away from this typical stereotypical fish shape. So I want to do a few things. I want to tell you about the seahorses, particularly here, and I want to tell you about the phylogeny, the relationships. What are these related? What is related to, and where did they evolve from? Now, essentially, so these are the relatives of seahorses. So we had a really good dive today already, and I think I pointed it out. Briefly. So the fish on the left, probably many of you have seen already. This is called a cornet fish, right? Like the musical instrument, the cornet. They grow to about a meter plus. But here in the sands, in these muck diving sites, very often you see tiny juvenile ones. So this is a close relative of the seahorses. The other one is a trumpet fish. And actually, if you go to the reef dive sites in Dauin, you see quite a few of these. Now, what do they have in common with seahorses? And what they have in common is this very particular jaw. So if you look at the mouth apparatus of these, this is not like in the case of a grouper or a wrasse. This is not something to grab a smaller fish or to graze. This is like a pipette, right? So if you get a little bit like a pipette, right? If you get a little bit of medicine from your medicine bottle, you would have a very similar apparatus. So this is a suction device. So this evolved essentially to allow this fish to suck in the case of the trumpetfish and the cornet fish, small prey fish. In the case of the seahorses, the prey would be tiny, tiny crustaceans typically. So, you know, in the regular fish mouth is essentially, it's a jaw, right, with big teeth to grab a prey fish, or it's something to break off algae and graze on these. But these are suction mouth fish, essentially, these relatives. Now, these are other close relatives of the seahorses. And you've probably seen these. Actually, we saw some today. I'm sure if you've dived here, you've probably seen these many times. So these are shrimp fish, and they same thing, right? If you look at the mouth here, this is not a mouth to grab a prey item. They suck up tiny, tiny shrimp from the bottom, and you know, often they're near these algae-covered rocks, where in between the algae they're tiny shrimp, and then they would suck them in. Now, these are also very peculiar in terms of how they swim, right? So they swim head down, and when they feel threatened, they move and they revert to regular fish swimming, and they swim with their head going forward. So, you know, these are the close relatives of the seahorses. So, a seahorse and a pipefish, and that's, you know, that's one family of fishes. They would have the same suction mouth, but on top of that, they have this highly armored body. So the seahorse body turned into this, you know, tightly armored skeleton. Actually, can I grab one of these? I have to blow my nose. I have to recycle one of these. So, syn, right, means together, right? And nathos in classical Greek means jaw. Thank you. And so all these relatives, and we've already talked about on the left the shrimp fish, the cornet fish, the trumpet fish, and we will still talk about the ghost pipe fish. All these are in the order, right, in the bigger taxonomic unit, which are the Syngnathiformes. So these are essentially fish which have a fused jaw, and in the narrower sense, the Syngnathidae, the seahorses and the pipefishes. This is one family which, you know, a fish with a fused jaw, which on top of that became very armored in the whole body. So these are small fish which typically hide in the substrate. They would hide in between the reef, in the seagrass, and they are, you know, they're highly camouflaged. They suck in little prey items, typically shrimp, crustaceans, and then they have this armored body. So these are the seahorses. Now, I would like to show you some of these animals from Dauin. Now, if you look at this way, if you look at this fantastic book, which you can see I've had that for a while, it's falling apart, and I think this was a copy in the dive shop. There are lots and lots of species. I apologize. Now, the Philippines is a big place, and there are lots of different habitats. So there are proper coral reefs, there are the sand, seagrass areas like here, and the coral reefs would also be sloping, there were lagoons, right? So not all the species which, according to this book, occur in the Philippines will also occur in Dauin. Now, on the other hand, so this is a selection of animals which I found in Dauin. And I would not be surprised if other people had found, you know, additional species, you know, additional animals. So this is actually, there are two living right here, correct? Yeah, and so this is the thorny seahorse. So the scientific name is Hippocampus hystrix. And this is actually quite similar, like this picture is from a few years ago, also from Dauin, but the situation is very similar, that they live in these algae which have these digits, right? And this is it's called Halimeda. That's the kind of algae. Now, so they would hold on to this algae, or here you can also see a rope, right? So this carded mooring line. And there are actually quite a few of these in Darwin as well, of course. And then the seahorses like these artificial habitats quite a lot. Now, on the right, this is the regular the reef seahorse, right? So this is significantly less spiny than the spiny seahorse. And on the right and on the left, of course, this is a pygmy seahorse, the Hippocampus brachypanthe. This picture is from Malabasqua, but I believe they also do occur here. I think there are a few. I've heard they're near atmosphere, right? So, what is this seahorse doing there? It's highly camouflaged, and it pretends to be a piece of a soft coral. And this is a very specific. This is a very specific soft coral, and they only occur deeper than 25 meters. So you first have to find the sea fan, which is typically large and dark red, and then you have to sit in front of it and like scan with your eyes every single one of these branches. One thing which works quite well when you're looking for that is that you look for this wraparound tail, because the coral itself is creating all kinds of crazy patterns, but it never wraps around itself. So this is really hard to find these. These are tiny. So these are among the smallest vertebrate animals. What's a vertebrate, right? Like anything with a backbone. So a mammal, bird, fish, amphibian, reptile, right? These are the vertebrates. And there are very few vertebrates which are even a little bit smaller than these. So highly interesting animals. Now, has anybody seen this in Darwin? Yes. You guys have been here for a while. And then, so this is a pygmy pipe horse. And this is Accentonura brevipercola. So this is, it's somewhat in between the pipefishes and the seahorses. So this would often wrap its tail around a piece of algae or seaweed. And then, these are equally, these are very small animals. They're, probably 2 centimeters in length. And you can see all these tassels. So why are they having all these protrusions? Well, the reason is camouflage again. So they're camouflaging themselves as a piece of overgrown dead seaweed. So this, I have actually not seen this in probably 2 or 3 years. These seem to come and go. Very interesting also are the banded pipefish. And these you would more likely see in the reef sites. So when you go to a coral reef, maybe in Poblacion or near Atlantis or in Massaplot, you will have these large coral bommies, these large blocks of corals, and then you have to look into the crevices, and then they usually swim there, and they would thank you very much. They would hover, and there would very often be couples. And so is there anything you're noticing in this image?
It lugs.
It look, which means egg, right, in Visaya. So there is the eggs attached to the underside of this fish. And this is a very curious thing in the seahorses, that this is always the male fish. So in the proper seahorses, the male has a pouch, almost like a kangaroo or wombat, like a marsupial, where the eggs go in, and in this pipefish, the eggs essentially glue to the belly. Now, similar, but not the same, So this is the ringed pipefish. You can also see the eggs there. So it's another male. These
So
are
does
typically
the female produce the egg?
Yeah,
And then she sticks them onto the male? Is that kind of it?
correct. Yeah. So this is a really interesting. It's a reversal, right? And so this has all kinds of interesting consequences. In that, essentially, in some of these species, the females are fighting over the males, right? Whereas normally the males are fighting over females in most other species, right?
So how do the eggs actually, it's some sort of an adhesive or something to hold
Yeah,
them in
they
there?
are. So they are. It's not a glue, but essentially the skin develops just
Yeah.
structures where they glue
Yeah,
onto.
yeah. And then how are they fertilized, Klaus?
Well, the regular external fertilization by the male before they glue on.
Oh, I see. Okay. Okay.
And
So the female produces them and puts them on the floor?
no, I've seen footage of that in seahorses where they're actually being transferred from the cloaca of the female to the pouch. I have not actually seen footage in pipefish, but I believe that it's pretty much a direct transfer. So they're not being laid on the ground
Okay.
and picked up.
Okay.
So it's like an animal to animal transfer.
Cool.
It gets even better. And so this is the ringed pipefish, which is a species which I always found to be fairly common in worldwide, where it's quite a different type of reef, right? There is a limestone and it's a wall, and so on the reef top in Moalboal, which is really it's a total different rock than here. There would be these, and they would also often be among pieces of wood and man-made structures. You occasionally can see them here too. And here again, you can see very nicely. You can see what kind of pipette, right, the mouth is. And so this is a really cool fish. So I've not seen this very often. This man showed it to me the last time. So this, some of you have probably seen the identical fish. And so the pandemic lockdown started in April 2019, correct?
2020.
2020. And so like a month before, Matthew found a couple of these, and this is a mushroom coral pipefish in the coral reef in Poblacion. And so basically, many of you are familiar with the reef in the village there. So there's a reef and there's a sandy area, and so if you just dive down at the edge of the reef and you go to 22 meters, there are these mushroom corals. And there was a couple of these. So this is called, the scientific name is Siconeuchthys nigrolineatus, right? Nigrolineatus means, of course, dark line, which is that line here. Siconeuchthys, that refers to Siocon Bay, which is in Zamboanga del Norte. So the first time a scientist found that fish was in just across here. So this is a really rare fish, right? And I think this was only described in the 80s. Now, what these do, excuse me, the diving gets all the gets the nose running. What these do, they exclusively live in these mushroom corals. They never ever leave them as adults. So the juvenile fish, of course, the fertilized eggs, when are bred by the male, and then the larvae go into the water column, right? And then they spend about 1 week, 2 weeks there. Then they settle on the reef, but they have to find one of these mushroom corals. Otherwise, they have no chance of survival. And then as adults, they would never leave that. So after Matthew found this couple of mushroom coral pipefish in Poblacion, and then, the pandemic started, so we didn't have a lot to do, right? So we would go there probably once a week, every 2 weeks. So we followed the life of these fish, and then at one point they were breeding, right?
There was three.
So you could see that the male was thicker. How do you think the life of these ended? What happened about a year ago?
Typhoon.
Yeah, so typhoon of that obviously hit the Philippines, right? And then these mushroom corals were, so what is a mushroom coral? This is a mushroom coral. You've seen this many times, right? So these mushroom corals were knocked over, and then the little pipefish were knocked out of them. And then when we went back, the mushroom corals were still there, but the pipefish were dead. Now, you know, this is worth pointing out. So what it looks like, they're living in an anemone, but it's not an anemone. It's a coral, right? And it's one of these. It's a curious coral. There's one polyp, right? If you look at the staghorn corals, they have a thousands of polyps. But there's one animal has one polyp in these, and then some of them you see them laying around like this, and the tentacles only come out at night, right? And others, like the ones where these pipefish live in, the tentacles are always out. Here, right? These lines at the base of that mushroom coral, these look just like that fish. And I would like to, I have a pretty, I think it's a pretty good video.
It's not magic mushroom coral, is it?
Unfortunately, we're still working on that. And so,
Oh, cool.
right? And so this is filmed with this very unique lens. This is this buckeye lens, which is like a wide-angle close focus lens. And so you can see that fish. And you know, yeah, really, like you could go there on a Tuesday and you would see that fish and its mate, and then you could go back on a Friday and they were still there. And you know, we did that routinely over the course of 2 years till Typhoon Odette hit. And so, yeah, I'm actually really happy about that footage. And so again, you can see the white lines at the base of that coral quite nicely. And that fish, obviously there's a video light now on, and you know what you're looking for. But if you're not aware what you're looking for, there's no chance you realize that this is a fish.
Yeah.
On the other hand, if that mushroom coral gets tumbled around and that fish is in mid-water, it's like a white thing on black sand, and it probably took minutes, right, before that got eaten. And yeah, so this is a real Dauin specialty. Whenever I'm seeing these mushroom corals now, I'm checking them out. I have not given up on finding them again. Now, ja, ja, das ist der Corarensis, ne? Also der Peregrinus corarensis, dieser Popcorn-Shrimp. Ne? Der ist ein roter Kopf, ja, roter Kopf und so ein weißer Kragen. I don't think they're the enemy. I think they're just they share the mushroom coral. I think the fish, if you look at the mouth of the fish, it's too small. Coming back, it's too small to eat that shrimp. And the shrimp, I think, is also, I think it's grazing on algae. It would not attack that fish. So I think just looking at their mouth parts, they would not be able to eat each other. I'm speculating. Right?
So they share the
Exactly. And the shrimp you see very often in Dauin, right? But the pipefish, I've not found a new one after the loss of this one. So, well, you can always hope, right?
Actually, no joke. I found one that 3 or 4 days ago in Dauin South. You get it?
Really?
Dauin South is about 20 meters down.
Wow.
I found one.
Okay, we should maybe check it out tomorrow.
Yeah.
Yes, that's awesome. So, I will get the precise directions afterwards. That's exciting, actually. Wow. Cool. Okay, so then, remember we were looking at the proper seahorses and pipefish of the one family, and then there were these other relatives, which were the the shrimp fish, the cornet fish, the trumpet fish, and the ghost pipe fish. And the ghost pipe fish are really quite something. And so this is, you know, if you start with, you know, what you typically think what a fish looks like, right? Like a trout or a bass, and then how different can it get? Well, you know, this is about the most different evolution-made animals from this, you know, stereotypical fish. And so there are, in total, there are 6 species which exist. And I think there are 3 at least 3 in Dauin. And this is the harlequin ghost pipe fish. And what this mimics, so you can see a close-up on the left, you can see the eye, and on the right, so this is in Massaplot.
Maybe you can see the eye.
Well,
There. Dead center.
this is the eye.
Okay, there you go.
This is the gill cover, right? And it's looking this way. and so they essentially mimic a number of invertebrates. Now on the right, this is their next to black coral. Why is the black coral not black but orange? Because it's only black if you take it up to the surface and make jewelry out of it, right? That's why it's called a black coral. But the black coral is actually, you know, yellow orange here. So sometimes they're in these black corals, and very often though they're in crinoids. And so they're highly camouflaged by not moving much and by looking like these filter feeding invertebrates, right? Now, so this is the harlequin one. There is also, this I believe is the halimeda one. Now, there are 2 more species which exist here. So it's the halimeda and the robust. And they're very similar. What's the difference from what I gather from the literature is this part, which is called the cowbird peduncle, which is essentially where the body ends and the tail fin starts. This is shorter in the halimeda. Now, so what are these mimicking? Well, it's quite obvious from the picture that they are pretending to be seagrass, right? So they're also swimming like seagrass. They would not undulate like a regular fish. They would just move back and forth. So we saw 2, I think, today, right? So same thing. Even when people are, you know, fin has this like massive, it looks like a telescope. And then even when this is being pointed at the fish doesn't lose its cool. They stay in character, right? They, you know, because they know once they start escaping, it catches the eye of a predator. So they would essentially, in their looks, but also in their behavior, pretend to be seaweeds, seagrasses. And again, you can see a couple here. And yeah, so they come in different color variants. And these are most likely, these are not different variants or breeds. They can actually change colors. So there are a few observations where people had them in a fish tank, and then they would put them, a green one in a fish tank with a lot of brown algae, and then they would very quickly change their color to being, you know, whatever was next to them in the fish tank. So within days, right? So this seems to be a possibility. And then, so this certainly was a robust. So there's the harlequin, the halimeda, and the robust. There's something called a rough snout, a thin snout, and the armored. And they're either the armored, I think, only occurs in subtropical Japan, and the other 2, they're either very rare or they don't occur here. It's very difficult to keep them apart. Now, one thing which I should stress is sometimes you find them like this. So I'm looking at the tail. I'm pretty sure this is a robust. Now they have this velvet pattern, right? So sometimes if you look at the, and there is a little bit of hair on this one. Sometimes you have them in orange with really long hair. that does not seem to be a different species. It seems that this is a variant of the Robusta of the Halimeda. So you know what sometimes called velvet ghost pipefish is really just a variant. Nice, nice. Yeah, I mean they're spectacular animals, right? You know, all of these things which I'm telling you here. So I think there are in total, right? There are 11 scientific papers about these animals because there's so many different fishes in the ocean. And you know, there's not, you know, nobody gets money to research this fish, sadly, right? So you get money to research fish which are being eaten, like tuna, or you get money to research like cancer, things like that. But so there's not a lot of scientific attention being paid to these. So what I just told you, that this is not a different species, that might change, right? If somebody would look at these more closely and look at the skeletons and, you know, maybe do a DNA sequencing, they might come to different conclusions. So fascinating fishes. Now, one thing which is curious and different compared to the seahorses is that in these it's actually the female which carries the eggs. And so if you have a couple like
So is
this,
that an egg there? Is that an egg?
No,
The
no.
white
no,
thing?
no, the white, that's just like a camouflage.
Okay,
That's
okay.
camouflage. So they keep them in a pouch between the pelvic fins. And that is actually a big part of the presentation tomorrow because there's so much to say about this. The reproductive biology of this is really interesting. Now, these are the ones from Dauin, and you know I believe that there would be more, but these are the ones which I have observed essentially. I want to show you two more species because they're so spectacular. So this is obviously Australia, and then what this is a distribution map. So if you go to FishBase, which is, you know, the #1 web page for all fish systematics, you get, like, for each species you get a map where they occur. So there are these sea dragons which either only occur in the south or in the south and the south east of Australia. And this I took near Adelaide. So this is called a leafy sea dragon.
A what?
A leafy sea dragon.
Wow.
So this is so Adelaide is in where's Adelaide? Adelaide is here, right? And then it was to be a 1 hour drive to a pier outside of the city, and then you can see that this is too far south to have coral reefs, right? So this is an area which has, you know, sponges, a lot of algae, and this animal completely looks like seaweed or algae. And they're not actually that small, they're about this size, you know, good 25 centimeters. But if you, and you know, it was my clear goal going on that dive. I want to photograph leafy sea dragon, and then I was there with like friends of friends who were from Adelaide who would dive that all the time, and they still had to point that out. So I had this in my mind, right, as a search pattern. Like I want to find that, I want to find that. I would still like swim straight over it. So now, you know, you see obviously what animal that is, but again, there's a pretty good stroke hitting the surface of the animal. That's why it pops out. And if you are just diving along and this thing is doing this and the seaweed is doing this, it's very hard to find that. It's quite striking. So I was so happy to find that. And now this is a different sea dragon. So these are pipefish, right? So just like the other pipefish, you see a male with eggs stuck to its tail. And this is where I was living before I moved to the Philippines. This is in Sydney. So this is in Botany Bay. This is also the location where the famous Captain Cook first entered Australia, right? First went on land. And these are a little bit less extreme in how their bodies are modified to look like seaweed. And they're actually even bigger. They are probably a good 40 centimeters sometimes. So this is what you get when you go to Sydney. You get a lot of sponges, you get soft corals, and you get this kelp in the shallow waters. And they're just in between the kelp. And it took, you know, I moved there 2011, and then it took me a good year to, you know, make friends with people who knew where they were. Same thing, if you just go diving and you swim over the kelp, you're not going to find them. So we found, you know, this at a very specific site called the Steps in Cornell, in Botany Bay, and then you really had to take your time and you would find this. So, amazing animals. I hope that was interesting.
Very interesting.
Please join tomorrow if you're up for it. Your book, please check it out. You can find me as Pacific Klaus, all kinds of pictures of pipefish, seahorses, sea dragons, and
Yeah, thank you, Klaus.
And some
hopefully see you tomorrow. I'll see you soon.
And some educational videos.
They're very funny videos on YouTube with him. Being funny. He's like the funniest man underwater. I'm not joking.
Well, when you do that sciencey stuff,
Yeah.
We went and did some science, right?
man, I tell you what, I always learn something when you do
Let's go do
science.
some science.
Yeah.
Save some souls. Yeah, nice. Yeah, I know those last two fish. There's a tattoo of one right there.
What's the tattoo of that?
The leafy sea dragon.
Whoa, how cool. Why and when?
Jeez, it's like 15 years ago now. Something like that. Yeah. It's a dragon.
And you got that because you were drunk or what?
No. I'm just showing you my cross of the leafy, weedy sea dragon.
Is that it? That's all it is. Look at that.
Isn't that cool?
Amazing.
Really cool.
Where'd you get that done? Australia?
In Toronto. A
Wow.
long time ago, yeah.
That is
I had
cool.
a- I had
That's
a-
exactly that.
It's very similar. I actually had him do sort of a cross between the two because the leafy sea dragon doesn't have a lot of color in it. The weedy sea dragon is very colorful. So I'm like, I showed him some pictures. And
Cool. So they did like a little clone job.
That's an amazingly complicated animal.
yes,
I mean, it's more complicated than a giraffe. You know, there's more prongs.
I don't know. Like, I mean, are earlobes
That
earlobes
thing's much more
complicated?
complicated than your earlobe.
Huh?
That thing is much more complicated than your
Right,
earlobe.
I understand, but it's got lots of little things. Little,
Yeah, it's very interesting though.
But they're not like it's not like a complex organ. But they obviously have a great purpose for camouflage.
Yeah.
Like the leafy sea dragon, he's right because there's a strobe on it, you could see it. But
Yeah.
if you
You've
were
seen them here?
no, you only see them off of South Australia.
Australia.
That's the only place. And you know, people have them as a closely guarded secret.
Yeah. They don't tell you where
They
they're
won't tell you where they are, apparently.
Naturally,
Yeah. You know, yeah.
at. I can understand.
That's what I've heard, anyway.
Are they endangered? I mean, like all the animals in the sea.
Close that. They're certainly
Less than they used to be.
they're certainly hunted as far as people like them for aquariums, right?
Ah, okay, tropical fish.
Right.
Yeah.
I've only seen them in an aquarium.
Yeah.
It's like a industrial aquarium, you know, like
San Francisco.
that kind of a thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. This one's in Toronto. Ripley's, believe it or not.
What
Ripley.
about your future in diving?
Yeah, I really don't know.
Are you,
I
I
don't
know
know.
you
I
don't
got
make
you.
enough money to start your own thing, but
I don't want to do that.
don't?
I can tell you, I'm pretty jaded about the dive industry right now.
You what?
Jaded.
because you wanted to take over Simon, didn't I understand that? And take
So-
over and run a dive shop.
I was
yourself.
well. I was managing it for them.
Right.
They actually asked me if I would buy the dive shop, right? And I didn't. I didn't. And I'm glad I didn't. I don't want a dive shop now. The dive industry is really terrible behind the scenes.
Terrible in what regard?
People are underpaid.
Oh, yeah.
Shortcuts are taken all over the place. So like here, you'll pay quite a higher price for a dive, but they're actually doing a lot of, they're following through with a lot more of the safety protocols and whatnot.
Like lectures.
But like the staff surrounding the place are probably still underpaid. Dive instructors aren't paid a lot. And now there's a newer dive shop that opened in the last couple of years, and they are undercutting the prices so massively that it's going to affect the industry here. So when I was working with Simon, our open water course was about 18,000 pesos. Right now they're offering, if it's 3 of you, you're going to pay 10,000 each.
No shit.
10,000 for a course. Now I'll tell you, I did managing, and I can break down the cost for you. For me as an instructor, I was being paid 6 or 6,500 pesos to do a course, which would take 3 or 4 days. Right? So if I had one student, I was making 1,500 pesos a day, which is the same as what a guide makes. If I were guiding you, I would make 500 a dive, right? Which is not a lot of money. And so if we're talking about 6,500 for an instructor, which they're not going to be paying that because they can't, the registration certification cost under SSI was 2,000. There's only 1,000 pesos left. Then you have to have gear, cylinders, cylinder fills. It costs 100 pesos to fill a cylinder. Right? If you and I have to go and do 5 sessions in the water, that's 1,000 pesos. So that means there's nothing left for the shop. So it's completely it's going to totally throw the industry off in this area.
So what's the deal? Why are they doing it?
So they are doing it because the owner is the one who's doing the teaching.
For what?
The owner is doing the teaching.
The brand new guy who just opened it.
It's open in the last couple. Yeah. So.
But that's not going to interfere with real operations like this one, who have clients with money. Simon
Right.
was also serving that
Right.
low.
Right, and so the small backpack oriented
Originally, I
budget
did the
traveler.
10,000 thing. I did the 10,000 for getting training from Simon. As well,
Yeah.
Before he died.
Yeah.
So,
And that's only because
you're
he
not
was the one doing
here,
it.
or you're out of diving.
I don't know what I'm going to do. So right now I can't legally work. My working visa is tied to Roel. It's tied to Baudi's dive shop, which is why I haven't done any diving.
Oh,
Or are
no.
they? No.
Skills,
Are they?
A lot of extra.
and then live, and then stop
Does that mean they're listening to me here?
Yeah.
No, that's nice.